So there's been a shift in education in the last couple of years to move away from teacher-centered learning to student-centered learning. And there's this whole rush to try and find different strategies like active participation, including multiple modalities. We want to address every single student out there. And I came across a teaching method a while back by Chris Biffle. And Chris Biffle, he teaches about how to use whole brain teaching. And whole brain teaching is a way of making the classroom an exciting way through gestures and zany types of hand motions and comments. And it's a way of teaching not just a couple of students, but you want to reach every single student. I remember hearing a teaching target where you're trying to teach 80% of students 80% of the material, and that's the minimum amount of learning that goes on. Now with whole brain teaching, I found that you're able to reach 100% of the students with 100% of the content that you're trying to teach, which sounds unbelievable. I sound like a salesman, but it really does happen this way. And I'll give you some examples. I've used whole brain teaching in Chumash, in Mishnah, in Diktuk, and what you want to do is you want to take short chunks of information and try and present it in a way that can immediately be retaught. And you're doing it in a fun, sort of lyrical way that makes it engaging, and you're activating all sorts of parts of the brain at the same time. Some examples of where I use whole brain teaching are in Chumash, in Mishnah, in Diktuk. And I can take a pasuk, for example, it says Vayera Hashem, and Hashem appears, and I'll go poof. Or I'll say Vayeta hello, and he pitched his tent. Batter up, right? So you want to accompany it with a short thing, and they repeat it right back. And the success I've had with this is that I've taught so far 2 prakim in Chumash, and the students know the psukim off by heart. They're able to sing it with the gestures and with the songs, and I even made a presentation for the parents, and they're blown away how they didn't even need to use a Chumash, and these are 38 psukim that they have off by heart. One of the goals of whole brain teaching is that we're trying to take learning out of our seat. It shouldn't just be this passive type of experience, but we learn best through activity and through getting involved. So for example, if I have a pasuk talking about Avram and Lot separating, and he says, Im hayamina, if to the right, asmila, and I'll go to the left. So the whole class will get up, and we'll all jump. Im hayamina, if to the right, we'll jump to the right, and then we'll jump to the left. And then we say this whole crazy rhyme, Yamin, right to the middle of the kitchen floor, right? And should I say the rhyme? I don't know, you want to hear the rhyme? Right in the middle of the kitchen floor. I went to the 7-Eleven store. I bought a Slurpee and I wanted more. Yamin, right. And you can see the whole class standing up, and they're just chanting and cheering. And also it puts learning back into the field, back into the plate of the students. So you'll have students come up to me after class and they'll be like, I have a great tune for the next pasuk, and they'll like use the SpongeBob tune, and we did it. Vayal Avram, and Avram went up Mitzrayim, from Mitz, who Yishto, he and his wife, V'chol Asher Lo, and all which was to him. You'll see everybody getting totally involved, and it doesn't just end at the end of the pasuk. Because then when you encounter that word later on, you have Hu V'ishto. You want to know what does Ishto mean? And I'll say, of course, you know what Ishto means. Hu V'ishto, he and they'll be able to jump in and say, oh, his wife. So there's this transfer of information where the memorized psukim are now transferring over into a different topic where you're learning vocabulary, and they're able to recall that information, whether it be a week later or a month later, and I believe even a year later. One of the more classic examples of using whole brain teaching is, for example, by Diktuk, when I want to teach a new rule. So I'll try and come up with a way to use my hand motions to piece together a short rule and have them reteach it immediately. So for example, I'll go, Aleph is I, and Yud is he, Taf is you, and Nun is we. And I'll say that, and everyone in the class will be doing the same gesture. So they'll have out their hands, but they won't be saying anything. They'll go, Aleph is I, Yud is he, Taf, and they'll just be doing that. And then I'll go, teach, and they'll go, okay, and then they'll teach it to each other. And then right after they're done teaching each other, I'll say, oh class, and they'll say, oh yes, and then I'll go on to the next part. You can do this with a whole variety of rules in Diktuk. For example, you can go, there are 3 parts to a word. Tchilit, shoresh, sofit. Beginning, middle, and end. And then you go, teach. Okay, and then they all teach it to each other and you say, oh class, and they all respond, oh yes. The amazing part about this is that you can go over at the end of the class to the weakest student and ask him to repeat back to you, what are the 3 parts to a word? And he'll be able to tell you, beginning, middle, end, because every single person is saturating this information when it's given over in a fun, exciting way. You can think a little bit more unconventionally to get people out of their seat and moving. For example, I'll have, how do you remember that mem is them at the end of a word? So I'll take a scotch tape and I'll scotch tape a big mem, so fit it in like a box in the middle of the room, and I'll ask people, come inside the mem, come inside the mem, and everyone will jump inside the mem and see how many people we could fit in there. And then I'll say, hey, look at them. Oh, mem is them. And then every time we want to say that mem is them, first of all, it rhymes. Second of all, they have that memory that's associated of them getting up and jumping inside the mem sovit. This can transfer over to things like Mishnah, Me'ematai Korinat Shema Be'arvit. You can associate every single piece of information you're giving with the gesture and make it more active and engaging. You don't have to think of whole brain teaching as an isolated way of teaching. You can incorporate it easily into other regular types of teaching methods. For example, at the end of the week, when we want to review everything we covered, so I'll have learning centers. One center will be a question group where the group answers questions on a piece of paper. We'll have a group that does Sharashim, reviewing Sharashim, and then the third group will have a laptop set up on a table and they'll watch videos of the skills we've learned through whole brain teaching. So they'll press play and they'll see me going, there are 3 parts to a word, and they have to do it along with that and then answer a brief question regarding those skills. So it's really easy to incorporate that and it makes it fun. And you can send this home as well. I've done things like post it to voicethread.com. You can send a link to parents to watch those skills being done by the class or being done by myself, and they can review it and do it along with the teacher at home. So it's sort of like a flipped classroom method where the students and the parents can come and know this information and be able to repeat it back to you. Today we understand that in order to teach effectively, we have to use research-based teaching methods. And one of the great things of whole brain teaching is we're really taking something that teachers have been doing for decades, trying sprucing up the classroom, making it more exciting. But we're doing it in a targeted way. So for example, by classroom yes, where I say, oh class, and they say, oh yes, or I do, oh classy classy, and they say, oh yesy yesy, what you're actually doing is engaging the prefrontal cortex, where something in the brain, when they hear the word oh class, and they say, oh yes, you're stimulating the prefrontal cortex to say, it's like, hey, brain, wake up, there's something going on to pay attention to. Or for example, when we tell you to stand up and everyone use your hands and gestures and things like that, you're stimulating the motor cortex. So you're actually engaging other parts of the brain that would have been sitting passively. A really key part of this is that when you're making a fun and lively environment, there's this rush of dopamine that's flooding through the body that's activated when they're having fun. And that's associating learning with fun, which is a great thing which triggers the long-term memory. And getting kids to stand up and just to move around and be active in the classroom, it helps them enjoy learning, make it last longer, and make it a more enjoyable experience, not just for the student, but the teacher as well, because I'm having a great time too.